I want to share with you a little bit about the gravest illness I've ever had. Like, by far, this is the illness that has had the longest impact, negative impact on my life, hands down. Hands down. And I suffered this illness when I was primarily in junior high and high school. And this illness that I'm talking about, that by far has affected my life negatively more than anything else, is spiritual blindness. To be blind spiritually. Because when you're blind spiritually, it affects your entire being. So how did I suffer spiritual blindness? I can give you 3 causes in my own life. 3 causes. High schoolers, you might remember that 2 weeks ago we talked about spiritual deafness. Okay? Today we're going to talk about sight. So 3 causes in my life. First, sin. Sin blinds us. If we're supposed to be moving towards Jesus, with Jesus and towards Jesus on the cross, sin is that turning around and saying, no, I'm not going that way, I'm going this way. I'm going to make my own way. So it's not only a break in a relationship, but in your journey of life, it's like putting on a blindfold. So I'm going to do that. I've never given a talk with one on before. Awesome. Super uncomfortable. I don't know what faces you're making. So this is sin, brothers and sisters. We're supposed to be walking toward Jesus. Instead, we break off that relationship, and it's like walking through life with a blindfold on. The second cause of blindness, spiritual blindness, distraction. Brothers and sisters, the world distracts us. The amount of time we spend on TV, like the amount of time I spent watching MTV when I was in high school is sickening. Video games, the texting, social media, it's a distraction. It causes us to compare ourselves to everyone else. How in the world can God break through? How can we see Him when our eyes are ever fixed upon the screen? Have any of you ever tried to have a serious conversation with like your friend, and they bust out the phone because someone texted in and they start texting? How does that make you feel? It's a total disconnect. The world distracts us. Here's the third cause of my spiritual blindness. Third cause. My prideful doubt. See, when I was in high school, I used to persecute Christians. I was actually recalling on the way here, when I was driving here today, I have like a 3-minute commute, so I have to think quickly. I got offered a chance to go see John Paul II at World Youth Day in Toronto for like $50. And I was so cold and hard-hearted that I didn't think twice as I walked out of the religion classroom and threw the brochure away, and then laughed at all the people who were going to go on the trip. See, I was prideful and I doubted. My approach to God was, why don't you make yourself known if you're God and you're all-powerful? Why can't I see you? Why don't you just come down at the halftime show of the Super Bowl and make yourself known to me? Why is it so difficult? Why is it so difficult? Prove yourself to me. What a prideful position for a human being to take on. Prove yourself to me. It's like taking out a magnifying glass and saying, God, show yourself to me in this place right now. I'm not going to believe you until you do. And we put God in a box, brothers and sisters. So this is how I spent my time in high school, spiritually blind. Sinful, doubtful, and distracted. Sinful, doubtful, distracted. Spiritual blindness. Spiritual blindness. This single-handedly has had the biggest negative impact on my life, hands down. What happens when someone struggles to see? How do you make yourself known to a person who struggles to see? My grandmother suffers from macular degeneration. Her eyes are just degenerating, they're deteriorating. Her sight is going away. So she has no idea that I'm even in the room unless I get really close to her, unless I touch her on the shoulder, so she can see who it is. Brothers and sisters, God treats us the same way. In our blindness, when we're turned around the wrong direction, He never stops drawing close to us. He never, ever stops drawing close to us. And He wants to get so close, in fact, that He gives us Himself to take inside of us in the Eucharist. Brothers and sisters, tonight's talk was on spiritual blindness, but now we're going to talk about the Eucharist, which is God's answer. And we're going to really talk about Eucharistic adoration tonight. Because God gives us Himself present in the Eucharist, there on the altar. He's going to be there. He's going to be there. So that we can see, so that we have something to look at. Not something, someone. God gives us Himself to look at, to adore, because we're blind, and we need light to break through that darkness. This is what Jesus does for us in drawing close to us in the Eucharist. Adoration is not just this fluke thing that happens every once in a while. God is truly present here. So let's talk about adoration. The first time I went to adoration was after years and years of my friends badgering me to go, and somehow they persisted through my making fun of them and then talking bad about them behind their backs because I thought they were Jesus freaks and this whole thing was dumb. But they kept asking me to go to adoration, so I went my senior year in high school, and I sat there. I was like, what in the world is going on? Like, there's 90s praise and worship music playing on the boombox in the back, CD, maybe audio cassette, I don't know. There's a big gold thing on the altar, piece of bread inside. People are kneeling, some people are sitting. What? I was confused. Some of you maybe been to adoration before and felt the same confusion, okay? Maybe you're going to feel some confusion tonight. So I'm hoping to kind of dispel the confusion right now, all right? So Eucharistic adoration, ready for this? We're going to break it down. Eucharist. Let's talk about that. Jesus, in Luke chapter 22, establishes the Eucharist. This is my body. This is my blood. He's not mincing his words, very clear. Do this in remembrance of me. Brothers and sisters, he establishes the Eucharist, his real presence. You might say, why does it look like bread? It's a great question. Why? Here's one explanation. Have you ever walked outside after you've been kind of in a dimly lit place? And the sun, it's like noon, the sun is just beating down, and there's like white concrete everywhere. You like walk outside. You know that experience? It like almost knocks you back, and it's so painful for your eyes. You can't even stand it. And then you like start tearing up, and people are like, the movie wasn't sad. And you're like, I'm gonna die. This hurts so bad. Brothers and sisters, that's what would happen if God just manifested himself in all his glory without a veil of bread and wine. If he just came and brought it, like, this is my glory, we wouldn't be able to handle it. Our human seams would explode, okay? We couldn't handle it. But he's so merciful and so caring, he just comes down to our level so that we can receive, so that we can look upon his real presence without it destroying us, because we're so broken and little. It's an incredible gift of mercy, the Eucharist. Incredible. And it's not by coincidence that it's bread and wine either. Brothers and sisters, we are on a journey in life, right? When you're on a journey in life, you need food. You need nutrition, nutrients in order to make it. The same thing in the spiritual life. Brothers and sisters, we're in a journey. We're going to one place or the other. Heaven hell. Where's it going to be? We're on a journey, brothers and sisters. And Jesus doesn't leave us without food for the journey. He feeds us with himself. His body, his blood, his divinity. This is the food for the spiritual journey. In John chapter 6, he emphasizes this. He says, I am the bread of life. Jesus says, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will never hunger. Your ancestors, he's speaking to the crowds. Your ancestors ate manna in the desert, and what did they do? They died. Brothers and sisters, we can look everywhere else. We can feed ourselves with everything the world has to offer. We can feed our selfishness with our sin. But just like those ancestors, we will die. We will die spiritually. Jesus says, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. The bread which I shall give for the life of the world is my flesh. He's talking about the Eucharist. If you want to live forever, brothers and sisters, and I want to live forever, that is awesome. Then receive his precious body and blood. Look upon it. Allow it to change you. Allow it to break through your darkness. So we just talked about the Eucharist. What about adoration? What is this going on up here right now in a few minutes? What's going on? Have you ever eaten a meal blindfolded? Raise your hand. Blindfold meal eaters? You're weird. You're so weird. That has to be a mess. Do you do it regularly? No. Yeah, that's awkward. That would be a very awkward thing, right? To eat a meal blindfolded. You wouldn't know where the food was. You'd be spilling stuff, making a mess. Brothers and sisters, if we don't eat physical food blindfolded, why would we do the same in the spiritual realm? Brothers and sisters, we look at the food that we want to eat, right? I like to think about like commercials that come on at 10 o'clock at night when you're super hungry. You know, all the fast food restaurants, they just lay it on right there because they want you to get in your car and floor it to McDonald's. Like, Big Mac, yo. They know you're hungry. And they flash these images in front of you on the TV screen. And you have this desire to eat something, right? It moves you. Now, what about the time when you're hungry and your friend walks in with Chick-fil-A and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to eat your food. like it's almost unbearable, right? There's something different when the food's really in front of you. I mean, it moves you, an image moves you, right? But it's totally different when the food is really present right there. It's the same thing with the Eucharist. Brothers and sisters, we can experience God in a lot of ways. Praying in nature, for example. It's a beautiful thing. We get glimpses of God's presence. However, it's a totally different ballgame when we come in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Jesus really and truly present here. And what does it do? It causes a spiritual hunger to just well up inside of us, right? This desire to receive the only one who can change my life. The only one who can make me whole. There's a profound difference there. This is why at Mass, before we receive the Eucharist, what does the priest do numerous times? Holds the Blessed Sacrament up for us to adore. This is my body. This is my blood. Behold the Lamb. Every time that the host is raised before us, it causes our hearts to be moved, to long, to receive. And that's exactly what's happening in adoration here tonight. Okay? It's like an extension of the Mass. The priest gets go gadget arms and he just keeps holding the Eucharist. Not really. But in the monstrance, this gold thing, it's beautiful. Monstrance comes from the Latin word to show. So the Mass, that moment in Mass when Jesus is held up, it's like perpetuated, it's ongoing. And the real presence is before us. The real presence is before us. So what happened to me in my adoration experience? Here's a short testimony. I kept going to adoration. It still blows my mind. Why? Someone as hard-hearted and blind as me. Why did I keep going? I was curious. Because I went in that church that first time, and though I didn't know what was going on, I sensed a presence. I sensed that something was different about this than I've ever experienced before. Something was different. And I was curious about it. But I was also a little bit afraid. Because if this is really Jesus, and if Jesus is really God, then it meant my life had to change. If that's really Jesus, and Jesus is really God, then my life has to change. I can't just be God of my life anymore. I can't just justify all my sinful actions anymore. So I wasn't really ready to take a step of faith and say, yes, that's Jesus. I was curious, so I hung with it. For about a year, I went to adoration almost every week for an hour. Brothers and sisters, adoration is like getting a sunburn on a cloudy day. You don't put the sunscreen on because you're like, I don't need that. And then you're outside all day, and you go in at night, and you're like glowing red. Like, how did that happen? You know? So weird. That's what Jesus did to me. I spent so much time in His presence because I was curious and it was different. I kind of liked it. Eventually, bam, He zapped me. He zapped me. And it was an unbelievable experience. See, I kept going to adoration into college. I said the first time was my senior in high school. Kept going into college. And in the midst of my deepest hurt, my deepest brokenness, brothers and sisters, finally there was a breakthrough. And I made an act of faith. Faith is always a response. It's a gift given first. And I couldn't just sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament for that long without having to make a decision. Brothers and sisters, He's either God or He's not. He's either God or He's not. He's either here or He's not. And I couldn't just teeter on the edge without making a decision any longer. And I will never forget Saturday morning in October, 10 years ago, getting down on my knees and making the most meager little prayer of faith that I could muster up, but it was honest. If you are who you say you are, I need you to help me. If you are who you say you are, I need you to help me. That opened the doors. That simple prayer, that response. A few days later, I made my first honest confession of my entire life. And the healing process began and is ongoing. Because spiritual blindness, brothers and sisters, is an infection that goes deep. And God needs to work with us over time to heal us. Brothers and sisters, tonight I'm aware of the fact that there are people in these pews who are all over the place in terms of your relationship with Jesus. But the invitation is the same for all of us tonight. He's going to be here, looking out, seeing each one of you, looking upon you, and making that invitation. Will you let Him into your life? And brothers and sisters, my hope is that all of us, wherever we're at, will say yes. Maybe for the first time, maybe for the second time, maybe for the 150th time. Yes. But I'm aware of the fact that in order to say that yes, there might be a lot of stuff in the way. So I'm going to give you one thing that might help you out as we enter into this time of adoration, right? I once went to confession, and my penance was to go before the Lord. See, I like control, okay? So the priest said, you need to go, and for as long as it takes you, lay down everything in your life. everything, every possession, your anxieties, your sin, lay it down. So I'm in adoration. It took me 45 minutes of just straight up listing. Boom, 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 one after another. And then the priest said, when you're done, thank God, and then just listen. Just look and listen. Look and listen. And let Him break through your blindness and your deafness. And so I was just looking and listening, waiting. Gonna say anything? I don't know. And for whatever reason, the blood that was dripping down Jesus' feet on the crucifix hanging behind the monstrance caught my eye. And deep in my heart, I had this sense. One drop of my blood is enough. I just sensed that God was speaking that deep in my heart. One drop of my blood is enough. It was a profound moment in adoration. There have also been a lot of times where I just sit there, like, hey, it's good to just be with you. That's cool too. But brothers and sisters, I want to challenge you tonight to have that expectant faith and to be willing to lay down whatever's going on in your life and then just listen, just be with Him. Just be with Him. And let's listen. And let's look. And let's invite Him to change our lives tonight.